Okay, I'm going to continue with exercise 3.3. We're going over different types of definitions. Last time I talked about number 1, 2, and 3, exercise 3.3. So we're trying to identify whether it's a definition by synonym, but it's an analytical definition, or a definition by example. Number 4, the red planet is Mars. That's a definition by synonym because Mars and the red planet mean the same thing. So the answer is synonym. A lot of people will answer that it's by example, but it's not example. It looks kind of, you might think it's example because it gives you an example. It says Mars. You might say, well, that's just an example, but no, it's an example by synonym because the red planet actually means Mars. 5, UV refers to ultraviolet light. That's a definition by synonym because they mean the same thing. Okay, so 4 and 5, the answer is the same. Number 6, the Cheyenne perfectly illustrate the sort of Native Americans who were Plains Indians. That's a definition by example because there are it tells you the Cheyenne perfectly illustrate. They're an example. Illustrate the sort of Native Americans who were Plains Indians. So there are many different types of Plains Indians, and the Cheyenne is an example of Native Americans who were Plains Indians. That's definition by example. Number 7, data in our case is raw information collected from survey forms, which is then put in tabular form and analyzed. That's an analytical definition. In an analytical definition, you define a word in terms, you put it into a group or a class of things, and then you separate it from other members of the class. So in this case, for example, the data, we're talking about data. What is data? Well, it's raw information. Okay, so you're explaining what data is in terms of raw information. There are many different types of raw information. So data is going to be one specific type. It's collected from survey forms, which is then put in tabular form and analyzed. So that's an analytical definition. 8, chiaroscuro is just a fancy word for shading. Okay, that's a definition by synonym because they mean the same thing. 9, bifocals are glasses with 2 different prescriptions into each lens. Ground into each lens, making it possible to focus at 2 different distances from the wearer. That's an analytical definition. It puts bifocals into a group. They're glasses, but there are many different types of glasses, and then it goes on and tells you exactly what it is. So that's an analytical definition. 10, red is the color that we perceive when our eyes are struck by light waves of approximately 7 angstroms. That's an analytical definition, okay, because it puts red into a class of wavelengths and then it specifies exactly the length of those wavelengths. That's analytical definition. 11, a significant other can be taken to be and it gives you a list of different examples. A significant other can be taken to be a person's spouse, lover, long-term companion, or just girlfriend or boyfriend. That's a definition by example. 12, assessment, quotations, means evaluation, definition by synonym. Okay, that's enough for that one. So basically, make sure when you read the chapter, make sure you understand those 3 different types of definitions. By example, synonym, and analytical definitions. Okay, now I want to, I'll say a little more about the next one. The next section has to do with writing argumentative essays. On page 88, you should be taking notes. Keep a notebook, okay? I mean, I shouldn't say, I want you to keep a notebook. And one thing I want you to put in your notebook is the 4 things that are listed on page 88. The 4 things that you should do in an argumentative essay. Argumentative essay generally has 4 components, 4 parts of an argumentative essay. So if you're writing an essay on should we have the death penalty, that would be an argumentative essay. You're taking a stance, right, on something. The 4 things are: there should be a statement of the issue. That should come in the first paragraph. You state what's the issue. The issue here is, should we have the death penalty? Then you should a statement of your own position. You should state the issue and then state your position on the issue. In an argumentative essay, you should also have arguments that support your position, right? And then another part of the essay, you should rebut or counter, refute arguments that support the opposite position of yours. So basically 4 things. Where you put them is pretty much up to you. Usually the statement of the issue, though, and should come in the first paragraph, and also a statement of your position should come in the first paragraph. The other ones you have a little more leeway, but in your argumentative paper, you should definitely defend your position with arguments and also refute the other position with arguments. Okay, and then also on page 88 and 89, they give you some good advice on things to do when you write your essay. Focus, focus, make clear at the outset what issue you intend to address. So make sure the reader knows exactly what the issue is. Once they know what the issue is, for example, let's say, is the death penalty unconstitutional? Then once they know the issue, stick to the issue. Don't, wander off in different tangents. Another thing they mention is that 3, arrange the components of the essay in a logical sequence. 4, be complete. Be as complete as you can. Don't leave important things out. Okay, that's 4 things that you should do. And then, okay, then another thing, here's some good writing practices. And I'm not going to go over these, but that's on page 89 and 90 about, what you should do to write an essay. The first one says, at some stage after the first draft, outline what you have written. That's a very good thing to do. Once you write an essay, kind of make an outline of it. Make an outline so you can see if everything fits together logically. And if it doesn't, then go back and revise the essay. Second, 2 is revise. That's always important. Read your drafts, go back, revise them for grammar, for organization, clarity, things like that. And it's always another idea, have somebody else read your essay so you get some feedback. 4, if you have trouble with grammar or punctuation, reading your essay out loud may help you detect problems. And number 5, after you are completely satisfied with the essay, put it aside. Then come back to it later for further revisions. Okay, so that's all good advice. Okay, and then on page 93 is the recap. And as I mentioned before, whenever you read any of these chapters in the book, I would suggest that you go to the recap first, right? Like chapter 3, I don't know if you see that, but the recap. Go to and it tells you basically all the important, what the chapter's about. So let me go over just a recap so it'll maybe stick in your mind a little more. This list summarizes the topics covered in the chapter. 1, clarity of language is extremely important to the ability to think critically. Clarity of language. A lot of essays and papers that are written are almost impossible to understand because the grammar is terrible. You read sentences and they don't make any sense. The reason is because they lack clarity of language. So I would say when you're writing an essay, that is the single most important thing to do is to be clear. Write clearly so people can understand you. That was the whole thing of QUERTOL. The U stands for write so people can understand you. The second thing, another thing that they talk about in this chapter is clarity of language can often be lost as a result of multiple causes, including, and these are the ones that the book talked about, vagueness, ambiguity, and generality. Now, I'll mention one thing, that this word here, child, if you read the chapter, you probably, if you read it slowly, if you read the chapter slowly and took some notes, when I write the word child here and I say, this word can be taken, it could be ambiguous, it could be too general, or it could be too vague. If you read the book carefully, you should be able to tell me exactly what I just meant. So let me go over this word, because this word is a good example to illustrate three different things that can go wrong when you're writing, having to do with clarity. It can be ambiguous. Okay, now you should be able to say, you should be able to tell me why it's ambiguous. Why can it be ambiguous? Let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say I say he's a child. Okay, he's just a child. Now that's ambiguous. If you don't know anything about the context here, this statement here it can mean two totally different things. Ambiguity arises when you don't know what a word means. In this case here, this is an example of semantic ambiguity. Semantic ambiguity. Semantic ambiguity means that a word is being used in two different senses and you're not sure which one it means. He's just a child could mean he's just, he's a young person. He's like 10, 11, 12, 13. He's a child. Or it could mean he's an adult and he acts like a child. Oh, he's just a child. Okay? Now, when I wrote that, you don't know what I meant because I'm not giving you usually in a context you'll know, but just looking at that sentence, you don't know what I mean because it's ambiguous. It can mean two totally different things. It can mean he's young or he's an adult he doesn't act his age. Okay, that's an example where child is being used ambiguously. It's ambiguous, but child can also be vague. So if I ask you, give me an example where child is being used in a vague sense. Well, you should be able to come up with an example. Here's an example where it's too vague. Let's say you go to, a lot of restaurants. You go to restaurants and they say children eat for free, right? Okay. So let's say you have a child and the child is 5 years old. Okay, that child definitely would eat for free. Well, what about a child who's 8 years old? I mean, is that child going to eat for free? What about 9 years old? What about 10 years old? So, the word child is vague. So basically what the restaurant should say is that what they should then define what they mean by child. Anybody under whatever, 9 years old or 8 years old, they have to define it. So that's children can eat for free. That's child is being used in a vague sense. Ambiguously, and it could also be too general. Now, when would the word child or children be too general? Let's say you're a mother and you have a daughter and you're thinking about taking your daughter to a birthday party. Or a party, some party, not a birthday party, just some party. And you read, that you're interested, who's going to be at the party. So, and they tell you, well, just only children will be here. Now, the mother might think that's too general because the mother might really want to know, are there going to be some girls there? Is this going to be all boys or is it going to be all girls? If you just say it's just for children, that doesn't tell the mother too much. So the mother, in that context, the children would be used it's too general. The mother might say, yeah, okay, there's children there, but are they going to be boys, or how many boys are going to be there, how many girls are going to be there? So this is just an example. The word child, it can be ambiguous, it can be vague, it can be too general. So just remember that, remember the three different examples I just gave, or come up with your own examples, because it's a good way to remember, what it means for something to be ambiguous or vague or general. Okay, that's all. I'll continue in another video, but that's all for today. Okay.